From famine and tragedy came a tidal wave of people. Irish immigrants fled their homeland in search of survival and ended up changing the world forever. This is the story of how the Irish touched every corner of the earth. When Irish immigrants first set foot on American soil, they carried little more than hope and grief. Between 1820 and 1930, over 4.5 million Irish men, women, and children arrived in the United States. The ships they came on were called coffin ships. So many died from disease and starvation that 1 in 5 never made it to shore. Instead, they found signs reading "No Irish Need Apply." Slums overflowing with poverty, and back-breaking labor waiting in coal mines and on railway tracks. Those who survived didn't find the golden streets they'd imagined, and building the railways that would unite a nation. Yet the Irish endured. They became the backbone of America's infrastructure, laying bricks for New York's towering buildings, digging canals. They formed tight-knit communities in Boston, New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, places where Irish music, stories, and faith kept the homeland alive. But their influence wasn't just cultural, it was political. Irish immigrants became a force in American politics. Tammany Hall in New York City became synonymous with Irish-American power, producing leaders who fought for workers' rights and immigrants' dignity. And in 1960, a grandson of Irish famine immigrants, John F. Kennedy, stood on the steps of the Capitol to be sworn in as President of the United States. From famine refugees to political power players, the Irish had reshaped America. But America wasn't the only place they left their mark. But America was only one branch of a family tree now stretching across the earth. For many Irish fleeing famine, the ships didn't stop in Boston or New York. They sailed further north to Canada. Over 500,000 Irish refugees made the crossing, many arriving weak and sick after weeks at sea. Their first steps on land were not onto bustling cities, but onto the small, windswept island of Grass Isle quarantine station in the St. Lawrence River. Families who survived hunger now watched loved ones die on Canadian soil, their bodies buried in mass graves so large they were said to move like waves when the wind blew across them. Here typhus swept through them like a second famine. And yet, some endured. They moved into cities like Montreal and Toronto, working as farmers, loggers, and builders in the unforgiving winters. Their accents softened over generations, but their hearts stayed green. Today, over 4.6 million Canadians carry Irish blood, one in every 8 people. Their crimes were often acts of desperation, stealing bread to feed a starving child or poaching a rabbit from a lord's land. But not every Irishman arrived in the New World as a free settler. On the other side of the globe, British convict ships carried Irish men and women in chains to Australia. Their traditions, songs, stories, and Catholic faith took root in a land so far from the emerald fields of Ireland that many believed they would never see home again. They stepped off the ships as prisoners, but they built lives as pioneers. They carved homes out of Australia's harsh bushlands, worked as shepherds and miners, and raised families who would one day help define a nation. Later, free Irish settlers followed, escaping famine or chasing opportunity. They formed tight-knit neighborhoods, built Catholic churches, and brought their culture into the very heart of Britain. But in their hearts, they carried it with them. Today, nearly 30% of Australians trace their ancestry back to Ireland. Closer to home, millions of Irish fled not across oceans, but across the Irish Sea to England and Scotland. Cities like Liverpool, Manchester, Glasgow, and London became havens for famine refugees. Though haven was often a cruel illusion, in Canada they braved frozen forests. But their journey didn't end there. Across even stranger lands, the Irish left footprints few have ever traced. In Australia, they tamed wild bushlands. In England, they survived against prejudice. They faced slums, backbreaking work in factories, and signs that echoed across the empire. No Irish need apply. But as they had in America, Canada, and Australia, the Irish endured. In time, their children and grandchildren would rise from poverty to become writers, musicians, politicians, and leaders woven deeply into the fabric of British society. And so, from the famine's ashes, a global family was born. Families scattered across continents and seas, yet bound by shared suffering, resilience, and a longing for a homeland most would never see again. In America, they built skyscrapers, The Irish became not just citizens of nations, but citizens of the world. As the Irish settled in their new lands, survival gave way to something else: identity. In the slums of New York and Boston, they built more than homes, built communities, row upon row of tenements filled with large Irish families, laughter spilling into streets where music played. Children ran barefoot, and the smell of soda bread and stews drifted from open windows. But life wasn't all warmth, and some, like the infamous Dead Rabbits gang in New York, embraced the reputation. In America's cities, Irish immigrants often faced hostility from locals. They were labeled drunks, criminals, and troublemakers. The Dead Rabbits, the YOs, and other Irish gangs ruled the 5 Points. Clashing violently with rival groups like the Bowery Boys, their streets became battlegrounds where clubs and knives decided turf. The Irish fought not only for survival, but for respect. But even amid violence, there was pride. And in Boston, the story echoed. Irish workers dominated the docks and the police force, and Irish political machines like Tammany Hall in New York rose to power. Here, Irish Americans turned their numbers into influence, shaping city politics and protecting their own in a world that often hated them. Yet despite the poverty and prejudice, the Irish spirit never dimmed. The pub became the heart of every neighborhood, a place to share news, sing old songs, and drown sorrows in pints of stout and whiskey. Irish music, with its fiddles, pipes, and filled the smoky air as men danced jigs on wooden floors. Marching bands, dancers, and floats carried Irish pride high for all to see. And women passed down stories of the old country. Food became a comfort and a symbol of survival: hearty stews, potatoes, soda bread, and later corned beef and cabbage, a dish born in New York tenements rather than Ireland itself. And everywhere, their culture became inseparable from the nations they helped build. From the alleys of New York to the pubs of Melbourne, the Irish carried with them a culture that refused to die. And then came the parades. On St. Patrick's Day, the streets erupted in seas of green. What began as a celebration of faith became a statement: we are here. We are Irish, and we are part of this country now. Across the globe, in Canada, Australia, and even England, the pattern repeated. Irish pubs and clubs became gathering places. Irish sport and dance spread. Even in exile, they were never lost. They were loud, they were proud, and they left their mark not just on streets but on hearts. Ireland, a small island on the edge of Europe, it's barely the size of Indiana, a population today smaller than some major cities. And yet, somehow this tiny nation has touched every corner of the world. From the arts to politics, from music to sport, from food to faith, Irish influence is woven into the fabric of global culture. It's in the ballads sung in smoky pubs from New York to Sydney. It's in the poetry of Yeats and Joyce echoing across generations. It's in the St. Patrick's Day parades, celebrated on every continent, and it's in the people. The millions of Irish and their descendants who rose from famine, poverty, and exile to become presidents, prime ministers, artists, and inventors. They carried their heritage with them, not as a burden, but as a torch. They gave leaders who fought for justice and equality. How did such a small island leave such a mark? Perhaps it's because suffering forged resilience. Poverty forged ambition. And exile forged a hunger to belong, to contribute, to thrive. The Irish didn't just survive, they gave. They gave labor to build cities. They gave stories and songs to inspire hearts. They proved that a nation's size has nothing to do with its power, and perhaps nothing to do with its destiny. It's to know that your ancestors stared down impossible odds and refused to let their story end. Today, over 70 million people worldwide can trace their ancestry to Ireland, more than 10 times the island's population. To be Irish, whether by birth or by blood, is to carry a legacy of strength, humor, and hope. It's to remember that you're part of a family, not bound by borders, but by history, culture, and an unbreakable spirit. They are a living testament to what a small nation can achieve when its people carry their story forward. Wherever you are, if you carry that emerald thread, hold your head high. You're not just part of history, you're part of a legacy. The Irish story isn't just about famine or flight. It's about resilience. It's about a people who took their pain and turned it into music, art, leadership, and laughter that echoes across the world. From the skyscrapers of New York to the farmlands of Australia, from the streets of Liverpool to the fields of Argentina, the Irish spirit lives on. A small island, but a mighty legacy. You are part of a diaspora that refused to be forgotten. This is MYSTRIDEX, and if you carry that legacy, remember, you are part of something bigger. Hold your head high. You are the story. Discover the past. Discover the past. Carry it forward.